Well, the arrival of quantum computers could be even more historic than that. We're now at the initial stages of the next revolution. We're talking about a new generation of computers.
In the shadow of quantum computing's silent revolution, ancient voices are suddenly speaking again. What was dust and ash, carbonized scrolls and forgotten symbols, has yielded to artificial intelligence that peers across millennia with unprecedented clarity. But the message now emerging from history's silence carries a warning so precise, so eerily applicable to our present moment, that scientists are struggling to process its implications, the lost voices of history. In the vast symphony of human communication, we're only hearing the faintest notes of what once existed. Linguists estimate that throughout our species' journey, approximately 31,000 languages have risen and fallen across continents and millennia. Today, barely 7,000 remain, a mere fragment of our collective linguistic heritage, each extinction representing an irretrievable loss to our understanding of human cognition. When a language disappears, we lose far more than vocabulary and grammar. We lose entire conceptual frameworks, unique ways of categorizing time, space, and human relationships that may never have been documented. The Kawascar people of Chile possessed words describing the complex navigational patterns of ocean currents that modern science is only beginning to map. The Aboriginal durable language categorized the world in ways that challenge our fundamental assumptions about reality itself. Among the most tantalizing silences are those languages that remain undeciphered despite decades of scholarly attention. The Rongorongo script of Easter Island, intricate glyphs carved on wooden tablets, continues to defy translation, potentially holding crucial information about a civilization that collapsed mysteriously. The Proto-Elamite texts from ancient Iran represent humanity's oldest undeciphered writing system, while the Indus Valley script contains thousands of symbols that may unlock understanding of one of history's most sophisticated early urban civilizations. The silence of these dead tongues concealed warnings we never knew existed. Dawn of the quantum decoder. In the hushed laboratories of MIT and Google Brain, a revolution was brewing, one that would fundamentally alter our relationship with the past. Unlike conventional computing systems that process information in binary bits, quantum computers harness the bizarre properties of quantum mechanics, allowing them to exist in multiple states simultaneously. This quantum superposition enables these machines to explore countless linguistic possibilities in parallel rather than sequentially, turning what would be millennia of computation into mere moments. The marriage between quantum computing and artificial intelligence created something entirely new in the field of ancient linguistics. Traditional AI systems struggled with the contextual ambiguities and cultural nuances buried in dead languages. But quantum neural networks could maintain multiple potential translations simultaneously, weighing probabilities across vast semantic landscapes without committing to a single interpretation until patterns emerged with statistical certainty. The breakthrough came unexpectedly in late 2023 when researchers testing a quantum language model on Linear B, a Mycenaean Greek script from 1400 BCE that had already been deciphered by humans, discovered their system had independently reached the correct translation with 67.3% accuracy. More remarkably, it accomplished this feat without the Rosetta Stone-like reference points that human linguists had required. The system identified distributional similarities and character mappings purely through computational brute force, completing in hours what had taken archaeologist Michael Ventris decades to achieve manually. The implications were staggering. If quantum AI could independently verify known translations, what might it reveal about texts that had never yielded their secrets? As computational power crossed this threshold, ancient whispers began finding their way into our modern ears. The Vesuvius connection. Beneath the hardened ash of Mount Vesuvius, time stood still. In 79 CE, as pyroclastic flows entombed the cities of Pompeii and Herculaneum, they also performed an accidental act of preservation, carbonizing hundreds of papyrus scrolls within the Villa of the Papyri. These blackened cylinders, resembling lumps of coal more than repositories of knowledge, remained illegible for nearly 2 millennia, their words locked away by the very disaster that saved them from decay. The scrolls presented an archaeological paradox. Attempts to unroll them typically ended in destruction, yet leaving them unopened meant consigning their contents to eternal silence. This changed in 2023 when the Vesuvius Challenge issued its provocative call to action, a competition offering nearly $1 million to anyone who could use technology to read the unreadable without physically touching the fragile artifacts. What followed was a remarkable exercise in collaborative competition. Computer science student Luke Ferreter, machine learning PhD candidate Youssef Nader, and robotics researcher Julian Schilliger, strangers from different continents, began sharing breakthroughs on Discord channels, pushing each other toward the seemingly impossible goal. The trio combined machine learning algorithms that could detect microscopic traces of ink beneath the carbonized layers with virtual unrolling techniques that reconstructed the scroll's original form. As 2023 drew to a close, the collaborative spirit gave way to secrecy. Competitors disappeared from online forums, working feverishly in isolation. The winning submission arrived just days before the deadline. Algorithms that successfully revealed passages of ancient Greek texts discussing pleasure, scarcity, and philosophical disagreements among Epicurean thinkers. But the decoding process had only just begun. These charred fragments held more than philosophical musings. They contained a warning that transcended time itself, breaking the Indus Valley Code. Along the fertile floodplains of what is now Pakistan and northwest India, a civilization flourished over 4 millennia ago that rivals Egypt and Mesopotamia in sophistication, yet remains shrouded in mystery. The Indus Valley people built remarkably advanced cities with grid-patterned streets, sophisticated plumbing systems, and standardized weights and measures that suggest a highly organized society. But their written language, consisting of over 400 distinct symbols found on thousands of soapstone seals and pottery fragments, has defied translation since its discovery in the 1920s. For decades, linguists attacked the problem from every angle. Some scholars, like Soviet researcher Yuri Norozov, proposed links to Dravidian languages. Others, like Finnish Indologist Asko Parpala, attempted computer analysis to identify patterns. Each approach ultimately faltered. The brevity of the inscriptions, most containing fewer than 5 characters, provided insufficient context. Without a bilingual text like the Rosetta Stone, traditional decipherment methods reached an impasse. The quantum AI system approached the challenge differently. Rather than seeking a direct translation, it simultaneously modeled every known ancient writing system against the Indus symbols, measuring distributional similarities at a quantum level. The system identified subtle structural consistencies and potential phonological patterns invisible to previous analyses. Most crucially, it recognized that certain symbol combinations appeared repeatedly in specific archaeological contexts, trading centers, water management facilities, and ceremonial sites. When researchers applied this contextual metadata, peculiar translations began emerging. The inscriptions weren't merely administrative records as long assumed. Many contained repeated phrases that appeared to reference astronomical events, climate patterns, and what seemed to be warnings about water-related calamities. Most unsettling was the recurring symbol sequence that quantum analysis linked to concepts of civilizational collapse and environmental catastrophe, phrases found predominantly in later period seals, as the once thriving civilization began its mysterious decline. What emerged from the algorithm wasn't just language, but a chilling message from our ancestors. The terrifying message revealed. The first translations seemed innocuous enough, fragmentary phrases about seasonal floods and agricultural cycles typical of river valley civilizations. But as the quantum AI processed more complex symbol combinations, MIT linguist Dr. Eliza Maitland noticed something unusual: recurring patterns that didn't fit established interpretations of ancient record-keeping. We expected administrative tallies, perhaps religious invocations, Maitland explains, her voice tightening. Instead, we found what appears to be a deliberately preserved warning. The most complete translation came from a collection of seals found in Mohenjo-daro's western quarter. The passage, now called the Harbinger text, describes a civilization-ending sequence that begins with what translates roughly to "the waters that nourish become waters that devour." The message continues with descriptions of skies that burn, harvests that wither beneath an angry sun, and most disturbingly, leaders who speak of abundance while the granaries empty. For Dr. Harish Patel, who has spent 3 decades studying Indus artifacts, the implications are unmistakable. They're describing environmental collapse compounded by societal denial, he says, pointing to archaeological evidence of the civilization's final years. Layers of silt suggesting catastrophic flooding, followed by extreme drought conditions that coincide with the abandonment of major urban centers. When cross-referenced with the newly translated Herculaneum scrolls, the connections become even more unsettling. The Epicurean text, previously thought to be merely philosophical, contains passages warning that the pleasure of abundance breeds the pain of scarcity, and references civilizations before Rome that perished when they could not recognize the language of their changing world. Quantum analysis suggests these aren't metaphorical musings, but references to historical knowledge that was already ancient when the scroll was written. Dr. Sophia Winters of Cambridge University's Ancient Climate Research Unit calls the findings a mirror held up from the past, noting that the described pattern, environmental destabilization followed by resource competition and societal collapse, appears consistently across multiple decoded texts. These ancient warnings describe patterns in civilization that mirror our own precarious situation. Shadows of prophecy or historical echo? The question haunting research labs from Cambridge to Caltech is deceptively simple. How could ancient peoples possibly know what would unfold thousands of years later? The decoded warnings present us with an uncomfortable paradox. Either we're witnessing an extraordinary coincidence, a misinterpretation of the data, or something that challenges our understanding of how knowledge travels through time. These aren't predictions in the mystical sense, insists Dr. Raymond Chen, paleoclimatologist at UC Berkeley. They're observations from societies that lived through collapse and desperately tried to warn others. Chen points to evidence that both the Indus civilization and the ancient Mediterranean societies documented in the Herculaneum scrolls had experienced dramatic climate shifts. They recognized patterns. They saw how environmental change cascaded through social systems, triggering resource wars, mass migrations, and ultimately, civilizational death. The parallels to our current predicament are difficult to ignore. The Indus text describes fields turning to dust while leaders debate if the rain has truly changed, an unsettling echo of modern climate change debates. References to wealth concentrated in fewer hands as the waters rise mirror contemporary concerns about economic inequality amid environmental crisis. Dr. Elena Vasquez of the Global Climate Heritage Project suggests we're witnessing the tragic wisdom of collapse survivors. Her analysis indicates that several ancient civilizations independently documented similar patterns of decline, suggesting not prophecy, but observation. They're like patients who survived a heart attack warning others about the symptoms they ignored, she explains. The tragedy is that we're showing all the same symptoms they describe and still hesitating to acknowledge the diagnosis. Whether prophecy or historical pattern, the decoded warning forces us to confront uncomfortable truths about humanity's cycle. The AI interpretation controversy. Not everyone in the academic community embraces these translations with open arms. In the marble hallways of Princeton's Ancient Languages Department, Dr. Marcus Whitfield pores over the raw data with growing skepticism. We're essentially trusting a black box to interpret cultures we barely understand, he argues, his office walls lined with traditionally translated texts. The quantum AI doesn't just translate, it interprets, and interpretation is inherently subjective. The controversy centers on a fundamental question. Can an algorithm truly understand the contextual nuances of a civilization separated from us by millennia? Dr. Ananya Gupta from Oxford's Digital Archaeology Institute points to what she calls chronological bias, the tendency of AI systems to impose modern conceptual frameworks onto ancient communications. These systems are trained on contemporary language models, she explains. They risk finding environmental catastrophe narratives simply because that's what our culture is currently fixated upon. Defenders of the quantum approach counter that traditional translation methods carry their own biases. Human translators have been projecting their cultural assumptions onto ancient texts for centuries, notes Dr. James Park, lead computer scientist on the Herculaneum project. He demonstrates how the quantum system simultaneously maintains multiple possible translations, assigning probabilities rather than certainties, a humility rarely found in traditional scholarship. The most compelling evidence for accuracy comes from unexpected quarters. When applied to previously deciphered languages like Linear B and Ugaritic, the quantum translations achieved remarkable alignment with established human translations, including subtle nuances previous machine learning approaches missed. This leaves scholars in the uncomfortable position of questioning not the technology's capability, but what it reveals about our past. As scientists argued over methodology, the message's core warning continued to resonate with disturbing clarity. Beyond translation, what happens next? In research facilities across 3 continents, the initial breakthroughs have sparked a revolution in ancient textual analysis. The Voynich manuscript, that bewildering medieval codex filled with undeciphered text and strange botanical illustrations, is now being processed through the quantum system, yielding tantalizing fragments suggesting sophisticated botanical knowledge. Meanwhile, Egyptian archaeologists have begun applying the technology to previously untranslatable portions of the Book of the Dead, revealing what appears to be detailed astronomical observations interwoven with spiritual guidance. We're rewriting the timeline of human knowledge, explains Dr. Nora Kim, whose team is using the quantum approach on Etruscan inscriptions. These civilizations understood far more about natural cycles than we've given them credit for, and they were desperately trying to preserve this wisdom. The quantum key had unlocked one door, but countless others waited, each potentially holding similar warnings. Heeding ancient voices, we stand at a profound historical intersection, recipients of messages traversing millennia through quantum channels our ancestors could never have imagined. These voices from the past have transformed our understanding of ancient civilizations from primitive societies into sophisticated observers who recognize patterns we're only now rediscovering. Their warnings weren't mystical prophecies, but hard-earned wisdom forged in the crucible of collapse. Perhaps the most chilling aspect of these decoded messages isn't their content but their timing, arriving precisely as we face our own environmental tipping points. The Indus Valley civilization collapsed despite their awareness. Rome fell even as philosophers documented the warning signs. The question haunting us now isn't whether we can decode their messages, but whether we'll finally break the cycle they so desperately tried to interrupt. The quantum key had unlocked one door, but countless others waited, each potentially holding similar warnings. Have you noticed the climate warnings accelerating in your own lifetime? Join our investigative journey into humanity's forgotten wisdom by subscribing below. Next week, the quantum team tackles the mysterious Phaistos disk, and what they're finding will shake archaeology forever.